Let's find out from Richard Holden what on earth is going on. Richard, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Thanks very much for joining us. I mean, Chagos as a deal will be done and dusted and forgotten about if Donald Trump doesn't like it. David Lammy said as much last night. Does that indicate to you that they're preparing themselves for a bit of a slap in the face?
Well, I should bloody well hope so. It's a terrible deal for our country. The idea, as you said, of giving away British territory and then paying to lease it back is absolutely crackers from Sir Keir Starmer and his mate Lord Hermer, who's the Attorney General, the man who seems to have made his millions from trying to sue the UK government on everything under the sun. I think it's absolutely incredible that also, on the flip side, we've got a situation where the government seems to be trying to negotiate via the broadcast media with itself. We've got, obviously, the Foreign Secretary on one side trying to say, oh, no, let's see if President Trump can undo some of this damage. We shouldn't be relying on others. The UK government should realise what a disastrous idea this is and stopping it itself.
Well, somebody said to me today on a rather interesting message that, you know, isn't it strange that we've got a man in the White House who tends to represent our values more than the man who's visiting the White House from the British Prime Minister's office?
Well, look, it's quite clear that there are real concerns around Sir Keir Starmer. Look, I want him to go to Washington and actually go out there and bat for Britain and do the best for the UK, you know, but whether or not he's actually going to do that really remains to be opened. And when you can see things like this sort of announcement around defence spending, which they've been dragged kicking and screaming towards on one side, and then it turns out that, well, as Kemi Badenoch mentioned in the Commons yesterday, you know, well, is some of this money actually going to be used not for our defence, but instead going to be channeled to Mauritius? You know, it really does feel really concerning to me that when, you know, they're dragged kicking and screaming to these positions and then it doesn't actually look like it's cracked up to be. So, you know, we'll have to see what happens. I want to see a deal in Ukraine. I want to see peace there. I don't want to see that war dragging on at all. But, you know, we'll have to very much... The devil is definitely going to be in the detail. And given the way that Keir Starmer has acted over the last few weeks and months around Chagos, given the way he's acting on defence spending, you know, these are very, very concerning issues.
They really are. Let's have a look at what happened yesterday in the chamber. This is Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch talking about putting British troops in Ukraine.
He's also said that we should put British troops on the ground in Ukraine. We haven't seen the detail of any proposals. Would his new spending plans allow him to fund this commitment effectively?
She asked a serious question about the security guarantees in Ukraine, and that is extremely important, because the worst of all outcomes, if there's to be a cessation of hostilities, is that it is a short break rather than sustained and lasting peace. And I think that that means there's got to be security guarantees. I've indicated that we will play our full part. There has to be US backing, because otherwise I don't think it will deter Putin. Not in a position to put details before the House, as she well knows today, but I'll continue down that route, because I want a lasting peace in Ukraine and Europe for the safety and security of Ukrainians, of Europeans, and of course for everybody in this country.
I mean, do you expect him to come back from Washington with some kind of plan of action? Because it seems to me that Keir Starmer's boss now is Donald Trump, who seems to be dictating not only our foreign policy but also our defence policy.
Well, quite. I really have no idea what we're going to see from Keir Starmer. I hope he manages to get something. I hope he manages to make some progress there. But it wasn't that long ago when Keir Starmer was saying any form of, for example, a free trade agreement with America would be a disaster for Britain. Now he seems to have totally changed his tack on that as well. So, you know, the way that Keir Starmer and all of those Labour politicians have attacked Donald Trump, attacked the United States year after year after year, I think, you know, it's going to take a lot of bridge building to try and, you know, get anything positive for the UK from those relationships. And that's what really worries me, I think, more than anything else. We've got a man out there, you know, who, you know, can he stand up for Britain, and will he be trusted by the Americans to stand up for Britain after what he and so many of his colleagues, even still yesterday in the House of Commons, are saying about President Trump?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating what Starmer and his crowd of what I would call very much below average cabinet members are doing to this country, because we now get this crime and policing bill which came out sort of under the radar really much this week, but according to a piece of Telegraph today, the police are going to have access to every driver's personal information via your driving licence at the DVLA. People at Big Brother Watch very concerned about this, that it's kind of going to be a facial recognition sort of library, if you like, for them to basically identify you in all kinds of different areas. I mean, they seem to be very keen on clamping down on our freedoms, but they don't seem to be very keen on asking us first.
Well, quite, and I think it's just not. This is just the latest in a long line of issues in this space. We also saw them not that long ago. You know, they're trying to reverse all of those protections that we put in the last Parliament around freedom of speech on some of our university campuses, trying to challenge some of those foreign actors, trying to influence and get into our universities. People like China. You know, really concerning issues there. I don't quite understand where the government's going in so many of these different directions. It seems to go off in one of these areas and then have to reverse ferret. And I think that's, Mike, is because actually when it comes down to it, their instincts aren't the instincts that you and I have, which is in the British national interest. Their instinct isn't to put Britain first. It's not always to be on our side. It's not always to think of our country before their sort of ideology that they're constantly trying to ram down people's throats. And I think that's the fundamentals on this, whether it comes to the Chagos Islands, whether it comes to defence spending, whether it comes to, as you mentioned rightly, these domestic issues as well. Their instincts aren't our instincts. I don't think they're the instincts of the British people either. And I think it's becoming very clear that Keir Starmer and his government are becoming unstuck on so many of these issues now.
Right. And they're also running out of money, which is even why we're even more surprised when he's suddenly found some money to send to the defence budget. He's taken it off foreign aid, which I think a lot of us would be applauding him for, actually, apart from people in his own party who think it's a terrible thing. But, you know, they continue to wreck the economy. It's going to get worse in April. Inflation's going up and up and up and up. Yeah. I mean, where's it all going to end?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, and it is a real concern about April. And the reason April is such a big moment is because that's when that national insurance rises really hammers in. I was speaking to, literally in Parliament yesterday, one of my local care providers came in to see me and said, Richard, please, is there any way you can try and influence the government to reverse this? Because for them, you know, actually, a lot of their part-time workers, they didn't have to pay national insurance for until literally it's going to happen in April. So you're seeing massive increases in their bills. A lot of that is being passed on to customers in terms of inflation. A lot of it is being passed on to the taxpayer in terms of actually social care often provided by local authorities as well. So it feels like, you know, they really haven't thought through so many of these issues, particularly these mega tax rises, which are really going to hammer businesses, you know, and I think families in the end, you know, up and down the country, with people paying more and more and more due to the cost of inflation, which are going to be passed on through to people.
Yeah, and once again, another inflation-busting rise in the energy price that you get. The price cap's going up again by 111 quid in April. So, I mean, that promise of £300 as a refund is looking even more and more like a lie. I mean, it gets worse. Old Miliband's nose gets longer every week, doesn't it?
Oh, it certainly does. I mean, Miliband, he doesn't even turn up for Prime Minister's questions anymore. You have a look on the bench, the opposition, sorry, the government from bench now. He's barely there. I think he's absolutely, you know, he before the election, one of their flagship things was we're going to knock 300 quid off your energy bills. Yeah. Now, what we've seen, this is the second big price rise we've seen coming through, and and at the same time, they are also putting our energy security at risk by refusing to expand oil and gas in the North Sea, instead leaving us at the mercy of people, you know, who are not international actors, who've definitely not got our best interests at heart. And it really, it deeply frustrates me that on the one side they're saying, oh yeah, you know, we want to tackle energy bills, we want to make ourselves more energy secure. They talk about it, yet they won't do anything about it. And it really is so deeply frustrating when you see it day in, day out from Labour politicians in the House of Commons.
It is absolutely awful. Good to talk to you. Richard Holden, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Paymaster General there with the latest rundown on the terrible nature of what the Labour government is doing to this country.